Alright, so British Columbia just dropped a budget that has everyone talking, and not in the wow, can't wait to see what happens next kind of way. More like the did that actually just happen kind of way. Finance Minister Brenda Bailey stepped up on Tuesday to deliver what's being called the largest deficit in BC history. And folks, the numbers are something else. We're talking $13.3 billion in the red for this fiscal year alone. That's billion with a B, in case you were wondering. Let's put this in perspective for a second. Last year's deficit was $9.6 billion, which already had people raising eyebrows. This year, it jumped by more than a third. And before you ask if it gets better, the projection shows it'll only drop to $11.4 billion by 2028 to 29. Meanwhile, provincial debt is hitting $183 billion this year and climbing to $235 billion by the end of the decade. If you're feeling a little dizzy from those numbers, you're not alone. Now here's where it gets interesting. To even hit those targets, the government's planning to pull $4 billion in new taxes from various places. That means more money coming out of pockets across the province, plus a slowdown on housing and infrastructure projects that were supposed to be moving forward. It's like promising to build a house and then saying you're going to take a bit longer because you need to figure out the budget first, except the budget just got way more complicated. But wait, there's a silver lining, right? Well, sort of. The BC NDP government is indicating they'll cut about 15,000 public sector jobs over 3 years, mostly targeting non-union positions at Crown corporations and post-secondary institutions. On paper, that sounds like fiscal responsibility. In practice, observers are pointing out that trimming staff without a broader strategy for economic growth is like going on a diet by skipping meals but never actually developing healthy habits. You might lose a bit initially, but without the full plan, you're not getting healthier long-term. And that brings us to the real tension here. BC's economy has been growing at a pace that some would describe as glacial. Private investment has hesitated, businesses are talking more about uncertainty than expansion opportunities, and employers are facing labor shortages in some sectors while dealing with regulatory challenges in others. The government's adding a new provincial sales tax on professional business services, which probably isn't going to make entrepreneurs feel more encouraged about setting up shop in BC. Here's something worth considering. Younger British Columbians, the people who will form tomorrow's tax base, are increasingly looking to other provinces or even south of the border for better affordability and opportunities. At the same time, older residents who need strong healthcare services are seeing delays on long-term care facilities. It's creating a situation where different generations are feeling the squeeze from different angles. What makes this particularly notable is that BC started from a strong position. The province has a growing population, abundant natural resources, enviable geography, and global demand for what it produces. Bailey herself acknowledged these advantages on Tuesday. The previous government under John Horgan left a $6 billion surplus when Premier David Eby took over. That's a pretty solid foundation to work with. The question many are asking is how that surplus turned into record deficits. Government spending has increased significantly during this period, but measurable improvements in services haven't always kept pace. Emergency rooms have faced staffing challenges. Housing supply continues trailing demand despite repeated commitments to speed things up, and infrastructure projects are taking longer and costing more than originally forecast. People are reasonably wondering where the return on investment is showing up. To be fair, governments everywhere have dealt with extraordinary circumstances recently. Pandemics, inflation, supply chain disruptions, and geopolitical tensions have created challenges across the board. Other jurisdictions have responded by pairing social spending with economic development plans, trying to balance support for residents with conditions that encourage business growth. The critique here is that BC's approach has emphasized program announcements without always ensuring measurable outcomes. The budget's approach seems to be spending now with hopes that growth will follow later. But economic growth typically requires specific conditions like attractive investment climates, streamlined regulations, and signals that the province welcomes business development. Without those elements actively in place, optimism alone doesn't usually translate into expansion. Bailey mentioned this month that the budget would probably make her the least popular person in the province for a while, and she might be right about that. The concern being raised is whether the budget provides enough encouragement for the builders, investors, and entrepreneurs who drive economic activity. When business confidence wavers, it creates ripple effects throughout the economy. So what does this all mean for BC going forward? The province is at a crossroads where decisions made now will shape the next several years. Residents are watching to see whether the focus shifts toward creating conditions for growth or whether the current trajectory continues. The budget sets the framework, but how it plays out in practice will depend on implementation and whether adjustments get made along the way. What's your take on BC's budget? Do you think the deficit reduction plan is realistic, or should the approach be different? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation is just getting started. And if you want to stay on top of all the political developments happening across Canada, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're covering stories like this multiple times daily here at Canadian Truth, breaking down what matters without the fluff. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.